Okay, I have 3 questions and a comment. I truly have utmost respect for Judge Garcia. You know, honored that he's willing to work with us. But has he ever written a police policy before?
Mr. President and Councilor Gibson, in talking with Judge Garcia, we talked a lot about how he has reviewed police policies in all of the constitutional cases that he's handled involving policing. He was one of the judges that was responsible for hearing those cases over the last 3 decades, who would have been looking at when someone brings a lawsuit against a police department, one of the central issues is training and policy. And so he was responsible for seeing how those policies applied to those situations and how they fit into that interaction, that litigation, how it impacted liability to the city. And so he's had decades of experience in seeing the practical impact. He is not a police department policy writer by trade. He's an attorney and a judge. But we believed that he was someone who brought together, and also as a judge, he's an excellent writer. Maybe not of policy specifically, but especially in federal court, they write lengthy opinions to describe and outline and justify their decisions, and to write very complex concepts into a clear format that the parties and their lawyers can understand.
Okay. So, and same question to you, Dr. Ginger. Do you think that this will be an asset in writing that Judge Garcia will be able to serve in as an effective asset? Okay.
Well, I think it's entirely probable that he will. I've seen work from federal judges before, and it's usually quite impressive. I agree that he's, by training and trade, he is not a policy writer. But at this stage of the game, I'm willing to try anything that's going to move this process along. This is a major issue. If we don't get this resolved, it's going to start cutting into the time that APD has to train, supervise, discipline, and get this process under control.
Yeah, I hear that message loud and clear. I'm not, though. I disagree with you. I'm not ready to try anything just to get us moving. I want us to try the right thing. And for us to start with old policy, old SOPs, and expound on that, I think that's probably the first fatal flaw that the department has been using. I mean, I've heard Dr. Ginger in the past suggest already written procedures that other departments have developed. I think it was, I don't remember what meeting it was, but it was right over here in the conference room. It only makes sense not to reinvent the wheel, and I've heard you say that time and time again, to use what is out there and modify it to fit our department. You know, we're talking about weeks here. We're not talking about months. You know, months, May is a few months away, but there is a lot to be written, distributed, reviewed. In the review process, let's go back to SOPs. The review process and the policy and SOPs, are they going to be going out to all of these different groups at the same time? CPOA, APOA, MRAC, the rest of the groups. Are they going to go out all at the same time?
There's that. President Lewis and Councilor Gibson, if you look at the bottom portion of the chart that you have, it shows you that it starts with the Office of Policy Analysis. And they're not just taking old policy and looking at the changes to make to that old policy. They really are reaching out and looking at other departments to see what does a good policy, what does a strong policy on this topic look like. And then they will put out a version of the new standard operating procedure with changes that they want made to it. And then if we start to go through these processes, the places in here where you have input from, for example, the Civilian Police Oversight Agency or the Police Oversight Board are two different places. The yellow box that's fourth, where it goes out on Power DMS for 15 days, that's a time when all of the employees in APD can comment. So over 1,000 people get the chance to look at it. And then also during that time frame, it goes to the CPOA and the POB, and they could give input at that point as well. Then if you look 2 steps down the process at the Policy and Procedures Review Board, MRAC and Police Oversight Board and Civilian Police Oversight Agency will be involved in that stage as well. So there are 2 different parts of the process where those groups would be giving input. And then another really significant part of this, and this is the part that I think will make this very strong over time, is that if you see it at the end where you have the green ovals that are your final policy, and then you have those loops that loop back to the very beginning, Office of Policy Analysis, and what they're looking at over those 6 or 12-month reviews, litigation trends, officer injury trends, department observations, whether they're good or bad, and also national trend data. And they would take all of that information, and then there, if you'll see on the right hand, we've given a summary of what these different groups would do. And toward the bottom of the Office of Policy Analysis summary, it says the group will receive input from representatives from the CPOA, POB, and local groups interested in policy development, review, and analysis in a monthly forum. So there would actually be a time when any of the groups that have expressed interest in these reform efforts could come and meet with the Office of Policy Analysis and give input that they want them to take into account for that next review period. So it's an ongoing, evolving process of constantly gathering information from both national trends and our own unique community of what changes need to be made to continue improving this policy over time so that we don't end up in a situation where 10 years have gone by and no one's looked at a policy again. That won't happen in Albuquerque anymore because of this new process APD is putting in place.
Okay, so how long will it take to get a policy through this?
For future policy development. We're not starting these policies from scratch at the beginning of this because they've already gone through this policy development process. The only thing that didn't exist before was the Office of Policy Analysis. So that part's new, and that's to make sure that on an ongoing basis, these policies are strong. These policies here, that's the reason that we've brought in Judge Garcia. You know, those policies have made their way through this process already. He's coming in to make sure that in the time that we have between now and June, that these get where they need to be. You know, he is acting as the Office of Policy Analysis between now and June, essentially. And then long term, that office will be more fully developed. And
so those have been through APOA, CPOA?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Been commented on MRAC.
These have gone out through Power DMS and gone through the Policy and Procedure Review Board where the police oversight groups participate.
And we've gotten comments back.
Yes. Yes, we have.
Mr. President, just a moment. Councilor Gibson?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay. Councilor
Dr. Ginger, it just seems like there's been some major differences between your team and APD and maybe the DOJ on policy formation. So I mean, my perception is that we have a communication issue. So I'm just curious to ask you, could the communication between APD, your department, and even DOJ be better? It seems like when the policy discussion started, you know, the communication said, this is what we're looking for in a policy, right. And I'm not sure if that was done, but it just seems maybe there's some lack of communication between these 3 entities. Am I correct or not?
Well, I think you can always improve communication. It's never a bad thing, but we're working on the same platform that we started with. That the policy has to address national standards and practice. It has to address recent case law. It has to address the New Mexico statute, and that's the same thing we came in on a year and a couple of months ago. That when we made our presentation to the selection group to determine who the monitoring team was going to be, that's what we articulated. It was articulated in our methodology. It was published shortly thereafter. It's been communicated to the city often, and not loudly, but at least often. So that hasn't changed. What has changed is we've gotten a much more compressed schedule of necessity because the city's trying to meet deadlines. And every day we don't get things completed, there's more stuff pushed back into the hopper that has to be dealt with on a short term. And we're confronting that now. Things that should have been done a year ago haven't been done, and we're trying to get them done now.
Dr. Ginger, one more question. Are you, as your monitoring team, communicating daily with APD on these issues?
Almost daily. I wouldn't say daily. We probably take Saturdays and Sundays off sometimes, but it's not. I don't think it's a communication issue any major differently from the city. I think it's just this is a complex process. It's not easy, and if it were easy, we'd be out of it.
We were not allowed to look at other municipalities across the country that have success stories, and a model that we could utilize when it was stated we could get online and within 5 minutes we can get that information. And here we are, you're making the statements a year down the road, and we're not near where we need to be. I mean, that's very troubling for myself.
And I think quite honestly, it was simply a miscommunication. Some words may not have been chosen wisely, and some people may not have listened carefully.
One of the reports that you got, you made 70-some comments.
Between Justice and my team, yes.
Okay, so tell me, what are the comments? Are the comments constructive? Are they, this doesn't work? Are they, what kind of comments are they? Are they comments that are actually useful to write the policies and procedures correctly? Or are they just...
Part of the presentation that's coming up will address that, but I can address it now.
Thank you.
They are all substantive. I know that council's been given information that the monitoring team is trying to teach an English class. I can recall all of the policies that I've looked at, noting one spacing problem and lack of some periods. That's the only editing that I've done. Everything else has been substantive. For example, I'm confused. You're writing a policy that outlines the duties of assistant chief, deputy chief, majors, and commanders, but the policy only addresses commanders. That's kind of substantive. You know, the comment on that 1.5-page civil disturbance policy that we got, policy and procedure that we got, was where's the mention of the First Amendment and the right to peaceably assemble? That's pretty substantive stuff. So if anyone who's giving you information that suggests we're editing and only concerned about style is giving you false information. Our comments are related to content, and understandability and trainability. So I understand there's some information out there that we're trying to play college professor or whatever, but I have lists of the number of comments on policies and the types, the verbatim quotes from what we said in our edits, if we have time to get to it.
Thank you, Dr. Ginger.
Well, that is certainly true. That is certainly the case. For us to return that number of policies, I mean, the success rate is basically zero. And that should concern anyone. You know, if you're a professional baseball player and your batting average is zero, you're not a professional baseball player.
Right.
And that's pretty much where we are right now. That policy suite that we got out with massive intervention. The policies that have been approved since then are important policies, but they're relatively, say minor, they're relatively tangentially related to the real issues that we need to be dealing with. So I am anything but pleased about where we are right now. I'm concerned, and worse than that, probably, truth be known. So I think this is so critical. Without this, we don't go anywhere. So until we get meaningful policy, we can't train. and until you train, you can't hold people accountable, and the whole process is lost. And the other thing to consider is that we're on an artificially accelerated timeline here. These things routinely run 7, 8, 9 years, and we're on a 4-year timeline.
We're getting an understanding, but I think and hopefully that there's going to be a lot of changes from this point on. So I hope the next time you come see us, there's going to be some good news.
Us too. It would be nice.
And we advertised that we'd be here till 1:30, so we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you, Dr. Ginger, for coming and staying an extended time. To U.S. Attorney David Martinez and your staff and everyone else, thank you to the public for coming and being a part of this study session with us. So thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No worries.